My questions are to Minister Vandal. This is from Nunavut MLA Jackie Jacobson, who recently said, "We're really hurting. Single mothers are having to choose to buy Pampers or pay their cell bill or pay their power bill or pay to buy food, and people are just going without." I'm going to refer to an article that was done by Cabin Radio not that long ago in March of this year, March 30th, just a couple of months ago. You insisted when interviewed, you said that the federal changes to the carbon tax, the subject of extraordinary division in the Northwest Territory legislature last week, a few months ago, are not going to cost any families anywhere in Canada anymore. Well, we know that that simply isn't true, Mr. Vandal. We know from the Parliamentary Budget Officer it varies between provinces from $1,000 all the way up to $4,200 per family. And I can only imagine that in the territories it's even worse. Do you stand by your statement?
We are actually very conscious of the affordability issues with all Canadians, including those living in the north, which is why we've brought forward a host of affordability measers in the last budget.
Sorry, Minister, I asked you if you would stand by that statement. That was the question.
Including
whether
the
you would stand by that
affordability,
statement.
the grocery rebate. We've brought forward an entire host of affordability measures.
So I'll move on to my next question.
On the carbon tax?
Because you mentioned, you actually
are you going to give me time to
grocery.
answer?
Mr. Zimmer, we'd like to hear the answer.
You're not answering the question. I asked you whether you're going to stand by.
He's getting to it,
That's
Mr.
in your
Vandal.
opinion. It's well documented that every province, every territory,
the Parliamentary Budget Officer made it very clear
every
that it was
territory, every province in the country receives a rebate equal or greater than.
I'd like to get some time back if this keeps going.
Yes, so Mr. Vandal, just if you can answer just his direct question, and you can move on to your next one.
Can you answer? Are you going to stand by your statement that it's not impacting Northerners more than they're getting back?
Every province, every territory, every individual receives a rebate that is to offset the increased use of the carbon tax. I understand the North have special circumstances.
So I take that as a no because it's not an explicit answer. So I'll go to this interview because the interviewer asked you some great questions in good context. And you just mentioned the grocery rebate. So reading from them, there's a few $100 in the form of a one-off rebate. There's Northerners who might say, look, there's half of one grocery trip up here. What else are you going to do to help people really make ends meet? Because that alone up here is the drop in the bucket. So you're talking about a lot of measures, and it's a lot of words and a lot of hollow words, especially if you're from somebody from the Northwest Territories, Yukon, or Nunavut. What are you going to say to them that really is going to help pay the bills? I just quoted you a member that single mothers are hurting up there. They're having to decide between either paying for their heating bills in the winter or buying diapers or paying for food. Words don't cut it. What are you going to actually do to make sure that you're stepping up to the plate and deliver on what you promised to Northerners?
We were in Inuvik last October. We announced $163 million of new money for the Nutrition North funding program, including an increased subsidy rate for nutritious foods in Northwest Territories.
I have to move on, Minister. My time is just about over here. So we talked about the cost of living too. I'm going to move on to some carbon tax. We talked about affordability. It's really all the same topic. And this, again, the interviewer that asked you these questions previously, so you should have the answers. As we talk about the cost of living and some of the measures your government is imposing, a carbon tax that literally every territory MLA says makes no sense, given the inability of anyone in this territory to move off of carbon-based fuels. Last night, we had the nearest thing to a Northwest Territory to a constitutional crisis over a government bill regarding the carbon tax, which nearly became the first government bill to be voted down in goodness knows how long. Why is the federal government not listening to the Northwest Territories on this? And why is it that Ottawa knows best once again? And a bit for the public that are watching, the Northwest Territories actually tried to stop and stem the effects of the Liberal carbon tax. But guess what the federal government said? They said, look, you cannot rebate your citizens the equivalent amount that it really is costing them. We're going to stop you from doing that. So, and I guess the question I'll ask simply, why would you do that?
Your previous question was about affordability, and I was telling you what we were doing with affordability.
If you can make your answer short.
$163 million in new funds for not only increased subsidy rates for nutritious food, but for the Harvester Support Grant, which helps offset the expenses with traditional harvesting and hunting for people that live in the north and are our Indigenous partners. Over the first year, there were 550
I'm going to go back, and again, I probably have very little time left.
I'm just going to stop us right there. We're going to pause.
Order. I believe the rule is that the minister in responding gets at least the same amount of time as the questioner.
That doesn't. It's my time. It's my time, Mr. Pawlowski. Yeah.
So I'll just direct your attention to the chair. So I will remind members, though, that we do want to hear the answers, of course, and we want to respect our guests as well. So let's try not to interrupt. I know your time is limited as well. I'll give you an additional 20 seconds, so you've got 40
then that's time
now.
that you're taking for yourself, because this is my time.
I've paused your clock. I've paused it.
The increase, $163 million in new money for Harvester Support Program aided 150 harvesters in the north in 1 year alone, 150 hunts, as well as 120 food sharing initiatives. To answer your question on what we are doing to address affordability and food security issues in the north. That would be the answer to that. The carbon, the price on pollution is exactly that. There's an environmental crisis going on all over the world. I know the Conservatives don't recognize it. I know in your annual general meeting you voted to not recognize the climate crisis. We are actively engaged with territories, with Indigenous partners, with to not only address affordability issues, but to fight climate change.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. That's your time.